Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Panelists, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves? Daniel, I'm just going to call on people. Sorry. Daniel, can you start? And if you could tell us a little bit about where you are in your career and just a little brief tidbit of sort of how you got there into your position.
Sure. So great to be with you all. My name is Danny Vanich. I am currently a development scientist at New England Biolabs, headquartered in Ipswich, Massachusetts. So I guess I'll touch briefly on my academic background. So I did my undergraduate work at Connecticut College in New London, Connecticut. I worked with Rachel Spicer on auxin dynamics during vascular development in populace. I then did my PhD at Cornell, working with Jim Giovannoni on molecular basis of fruit ripening. And then sort of toward the end of my PhD, got really interested in sort of methods development. And currently, my position focuses on product development, specifically enzymatic methods for DNA methylation detection. So, kits for NGS library prep. Yeah, so I think that was everything, but yeah, happy to be with you all.
Thank you so much. Michael, do you want to go next?
Sure thing. Thank you all for having me. My name's Michael Belovich. I'm a field application scientist with Lycor Environmental. I am I originally got my undergraduate degree at the University of James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And then I kind of took a little break, did a lot of field tech jobs, and then kind of went back to back with my master's and PhD at the University of Georgia in the Warnell School of Forestry, and then in the Odum School of Ecology. Primarily during my degree, my focus was on ecophysiology. I was studying savanna plant communities in South Africa with Ricardo Holdo. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Jennifer?
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I've been doing plant scientist, like majoring in molecular biology and genomics for over 20 years. So I started like in Hong Kong, where I'm from, and then I do my PhD in Hawaii. And then after that, I landed my first postdoc in UIUC. And then after that, I moved to Michigan State University. That for my life, I've been doing like tropical plant and genomes. And then after that, I have a career shift. Right now, I'm actually working in a genomic sequencing core at Northwestern University.
Awesome. Thank you. Our last panelist is back in her computer and is slowly trying to log on. While we wait for Sarah to appear, I will just remind you all, you're all muted. There are 80 of you in this room. Please remain muted, or we have somebody on call to force you to be muted. It's just too many people to have conversations. So what we will do is use the chat, although we have lots of the questions that you submitted as you registered for Zoom that we're going to go through. We've sort of grouped them together in terms of theme. We're very sorry if we did not get to your question. There are lots of them. But as you put things in the chat, our panelists, if they're not answering, can maybe address simpler ones. And if we see a recurrent theme popping up in the chat, we'll try to make an effort to get to it verbally before our hour is done. And I see Dr. Taylor here. Sarah, can you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hi, sorry I'm late, everybody. My name is Sarah Taylor. I am the collections manager for the herbarium at the University of Connecticut. If you're not familiar with herbaria, they are a form of a natural history collection that is composed of pressed, dried, preserved plants. And our collection is a little less than 300,000 plants. Let's see, did you guys go through the list of questions that David sent for intros?
We did a brief version of them, yeah. So what was your degree and how you kind of got to where you are?
I have a BA in biology from a small liberal arts college, and then I got my PhD in plant biology from the University of Texas. Let's see. Oh, what made you decide to pursue a career outside of academia? Really briefly, I still consider myself to be in academia. I just have a staff job rather than a faculty job. But the reason I didn't want a faculty job ultimately is that I really love plants. I love natural history collections. I love field work, but I didn't love things like grant writing or writing up papers. And I also felt like this kind of a job would have a better work-life balance, which I think it does have a better work-life balance.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Okay, so as a reminder, use the chat if you have questions. Don't unmute yourself, except for panelists. Please feel free to be unmuted. So we're going to go ahead and start with a question that came up recurrently in the Zoom registrations, which was basically where or how did you find your current job? Was it through connections? Was it through a particular search online? Did you happen to find the right ad at the right time? These are all going to be varied experiences, but the goal here is to just highlight that variation. Anybody can answer. I'm not going to call on you.
So I'd be happy to go first. I think my experience was, I guess, very much sort of the old-fashioned way of I saw a job posting that seemed interesting, and just applied for it and kind of went through that process that way. As I was finishing up, I sort of had a sense of what sort of companies and what sorts of roles I was interested in, and so NEB was sort of one of the companies on my list, and I would sort of periodically, check their job postings, and it just sort of worked out that, the role kind of appeared at the right time.
Yeah, I would echo that. I pretty boring, but I just saw a LinkedIn advertising post and and applied. They wanted somebody with field experience. I had used Lycor instruments a lot for the analyzers and photosynthesis machines um, in my past research, but that was pretty much it.
So mine is a little bit different. I got the job that I have now. I actually had been working in a part-time collections manager position at another institution, and my boss there sent me a post from the Society for the Preservation of Natural History Collections listserv email advertising this position and said, "Hey, did you see this?" And I had not, and so that's how I ended up applying for it.
So mine is a little bit weird. So I was thinking of my career, and I decided not to be a faculty or tenure track. So at that time, I just thought, okay, I'm just gonna apply for all the industry. And I saw a job opening in the sequencing core at Northwestern. I actually applied the job, and I never hear from back for 2 months. And suddenly one day they just call me, and I found out later after I got the job is someone in the core has the single cell RNC background actually is leaving that position, and they need someone who actually has something work on NGS and everything. And at that time when I was in MSU, I actually started developing that single cell there in Barbara and Bill's lab. And so I think because of my background and on the NGS, that's how it landed me on this job.
Nice. So lots of different ways, it sounds like. Well, I'm going to return briefly to something that Sarah had brought up in her introduction is thinking about work-life balance, right? I think that's something that a lot of folks maybe thinking about non-faculty positions value. So, how do you find your work-life balance? How much control do you have over your own schedule? Kind of insights into what that looks like on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I can start first. So my role is split 50-50 between remote work and travel typically. So I'm kind of obligated to travel at least 2 weeks out of the month. While traveling, my schedule is really all over the place. So it's if it's a field day, I plan typically for 10 to 12 hours in the field a day. If we're doing customer visits or workshops or talking with folks, and that's more of a normal, 8, 9 hour workday, but you kind of have to rush around and hop from task to task. But when I'm at home or I'm doing remote work, it's pretty strict, 8 to 5 standard workday, which is really nice.
So I would say the kind of, bulk of my work weeks, tend to be, sort of that, 8:30 to 5:30, sort of range. So fairly typical. I work primarily at the bench still, so there's always going to be some component of depending on sort of what my day looks like and how many meetings I have, I might come in early to finish something or stay late. Um, Depending on if it's, very high priority project and we need to kind of turn things around more quickly, I might, need to come in on the weekend or something, but that tends to be less frequent and, sort of communicated in, well in advance.
You don't all have to answer every question, by the way. This will take forever if we do. You can always come back to something too if there's a pause and I interrupt us and you have a thought about a previous thing. I think that, a lot of us as we go through university and graduate school see faculty, well, maybe one of two ways. Probably the truth is that faculty don't really get to do a lot of the science anymore. So to what extent does your current position let you still engage with your scientific curiosity, work on research problems, problem solving, all that fun stuff?
So maybe I would say, because I'm still officially in academic, right? But right now I'm actually mostly on medical school, because that's what Northwestern is major at. So a lot of work, like even though mine is a plant science background, so of course a lot of things we do cannot apply to the human. So when I start doing it, a lot of things I have to read back all my human biology and actually know what is a T cell and B cell, which I never really learned. But at the same time, like when you start hearing all the story that, because most of my clients are in a medical school, it's actually a huge mix of people that is, could be a clinician, could be a PhD, could be an MD, PhD, could be an MD, has no molecular biology background. So they actually will come to you and ask you, I want to do this. Is it possible? Or like you actually talk to them like just like how you talk to your PI or your other postdoc when you're in your research. But the only thing is because right now I'm only a part of the research, not the whole research you do from the beginning to the end. So after you finish your part, you're willing to give the baby back to your client and then give them the data back. And then you feel like you never see the end, but it's not really true. Sometimes you actually see the publication and that's your happiness coming from.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for, there's a whole bunch of different ways I feel like I get to engage continuously with the scientific community. So I'm always learning about new projects and kind of research from a lot of our customers when they want to adapt our instruments or our sensors to their kind of specifications. For a lot of them, I have to collaborate and kind of come up with an experimental design together that works for them. And then a huge part of my like kind of field component of the job is, going out, installing sensors, do a lot of problem solving, analyzing data for folks. The nicest part though is that it's not my data. Sometimes it's nice to have a sense of ownership, but I feel like people can be overly critical of their own data, and so having like one level removed can be really freeing when you're trying to problem solve for somebody else's data set.
I would say in my job, there are a couple of ways that I still get to engage with the scientific curiosity part of my brain. And one is that because I'm part of an academic department, I do go to things like department seminars, special speakers that come to campus, that kind of thing. So I feel like I'm still very embedded in campus life, even though I'm not a faculty person. And then the other thing is I do get to do research on my own, either in the collection space or I do a little bit of botanical research here and there, just like little projects that feel really good to do. And I present at academic conferences, and I love the exchange of ideas at conferences. I know some people love conferences and some don't like them so much, but I love going to conferences.
So I would say, in my day to day, a lot of the sort of the way that I engage with science, is more in the molecular biology and biochemistry, for the sort of methods development work that we do. So that's, not always, essentially my like academic background, but, I find that sort of equally fulfilling. But also when we get to go to conferences or talk to customers, that's also a way to sort of engage, with the scientific questions that they're asking. And it's, really rewarding to see our products, getting used by people to answer their own questions.
Right on. Thank you, everybody. Okay, a little bit more nitty-gritty of a question. Thinking about folks in this Zoom probably wanting to think about building their CVs or their resumes. What are some kinds of experiences or skills or certifications, etc., that may help somebody land a job in your particular field, however you want to interpret that?
So for me, the two kind of big ones are field experience and really technical skills in terms of instrumentations and understanding how those function and how they're talking to each other. So kind of when I was coming into this, I had like a decade's worth of field experience going into the job search coming out of my PhD. And a lot of that time, I was kind of building and configuring my own sensors and instruments to answer my own research questions. So I think that helped from Lycor's point of view, at least stand out for why I was maybe a good fit for that role. So kind of getting into more, I mean, it's no certificate I got, but just kind of educating myself on electrical engineering and kind of the more interdisciplinary approach really helped.
So I think for me, during the interview process, obviously sort of having that molecular biology background and understanding is sort of the kind of baseline. But I think a large component of it was also sort of how do you kind of think about and approach a problem in molecular biology? Sort of like what is your thought process, and can you give specific examples of how you've taken a workflow or something that wasn't optimal or wasn't working and kind of troubleshot your way into getting it kind of working. So I think those sorts of tangible kind of vignettes, were helpful as well.
So I think one of the problems when I moved my career away from the plant is I was hesitate for myself that like, would they actually take me as a plant scientist in the medical world? And after I've been in this like position for 6 years, apparently it's more than you can think of. For example, in our proteomic course, we actually hired someone just from Carolina State, which is actually a plant scientist working on sorghum. But because he has a strong proteomics background when he was working in the plant science, so for a core, for us, it's like, you don't need to know all the things about human because it's protein. So that's one thing you can think about when you think out of the box. Another thing is like if you do a lot of computational science, like on analyze and data and everything, it's all the analysis is all DNA, ATGC. It doesn't matter if you're a human or mouse or you're a plant. Of course, the statistic gonna be a little bit different, but that's translatable. That's how I land on this job. And if you do a lot of microscopic work, you'll be surprised a lot of the university and hospital actually have a microscopic core, and they need people, they don't need to work on animal, but they need to know how to image, how to fix a sample. So like those, like you do a lot of SEM or TM on, a plant structure seed, those actually as translatable skills that you can think about when you see in an academic that is non-plant university. That might be something you should actually think and put a CV and see if you might get it. You'll be surprised.
I'm gonna actually, the next question jumps off really nicely from what Jennifer just said. Are there other sort of skills that you've now realized you have that maybe weren't like the main part of your training, but you've realized how transferable they are in your current position, or alternatively, skills you developed doing your research that you didn't think would be helpful at all, but now you can see how they are actually really helpful in navigating your current position?
I think one of the things that I didn't realize because I do a lot of lab management as well, and also talking to a lot of people to get a good term with your neighbor lab so that you can borrow reagent all the time, that kind of things, or know who's the person to go to when you forget to buy something. And those kind of we call it people skills, right? Like for example, in my core job right now, I actually talk to clients every day because they come to me for consultation. I not just academic, but if you eventually just like Michael, right? He's like a FAS. So he has to talk to client. And one of the major skills will be like, are you able to talk and communicate with your client clearly to understand what they need and then representing your company. So there's a lot of jobs in the world actually, like Thermo Fisher, or they sell a lot of kits, or like or NEB, they have sales rep, they have FAS, they have technical support that is the person you always email and ask them a bunch of questions. Those are the people actually with a scientific background. They're not necessarily all coming from medical. A lot of them actually coming from microbiology, plant scientists. So that's why those are the skills that you don't underestimate yourself. You'll be surprised that if you're a very good organizer in your lab, you might be an extremely good project manager in like an institute. And those are the skill sets that will show up when you actually work there.
That's great. Any other comments on that topic?
I mean, this is a little bit superficial, but like growing up, I had all kinds of collections. Like, I'm a Gen X kid. I had a whole collection of like little tiny erasers, and I had a stamp collection, and I had this collection, and I just loved organizing things and cataloging things. And I never thought actually that there would be like a career that would fit with that interest.
Know thyself, I guess, is the the take-home message there. Um, okay, we had a lot of questions submitted that were sort of about, the level of education or experience needed to get either your job or a job in your company or a similar sort of level. So I have specific questions, but maybe I'll start with sort of the simplest. Was a postdoc expected? Are there two questions? Was a postdoc expected? And on the other hand, are there positions in your field or company that don't require a graduate degree?
I have a really fast answer to this,
Yeah.
which is no, a postdoc was not expected. I have a PhD. Most of the job ads I see for my position ask for a master's degree or higher, but I do know two people who in the last 2 years got collections manager jobs with BS degrees. They didn't even have a master's and they still got hired as collections managers because they had a lot of experience going into the job.
So at least for my role, I, did not do a postdoc. So people in my role, tend to come in, either directly, from graduate school, or some have had some postdoctoral experience. Normally to get hired at a higher level, more likely have some previous industry experience. And there's certainly people that have, bachelor's or master's with that kind of industry experience that can also, get hired in the sort of role that I have.
Yeah, I'd say most people, most scientists at Lycor do not have postdocs or do not do postdocs. Some of them have, but typically we are expected to have PhDs in our respective fields. I think for non-graduate degrees, there's a lot of roles kind of in the like assembling the instruments, some of the software development, and sales roles as well. So our sales team is expected to be kind of fluent in the kind of general scientific theory, but they do not have graduate level degrees.
For my team right now, like in my core, like we have about 10 people and we have actually two bioinformaticians there. So my bioinformatics director is a PhD level. He didn't really do a postdoc, but like actually in the industry for a short period of time. But then for our other bioinformaticians that work under him, he actually only have a undergraduate degree. We have other team member that has the master degree, but we have a wide range of people in our core because we need some people that is more on the entrance level, and we have some people that is more senior that like will have a role that will more doing on troubleshooting and dealing with customer with difficult project and everything. So for right now, for me, I'm an assistant director there. So I do have a PhD because a lot of project need a little bit more um design and the help and like also like sometimes we actually have to help people to write the grant and budgeting and all those are paperwork, administrative work. So those is more on the PhD level, but we do have a lot of also on hand skills for work that only need either an undergraduate degree or a master degree. So that is a wide range in the core and not just on my core, but even on proteomics and all the other core that I see, they do tend to have a wide range of people with different qualification.
Are there any internships or professional certifications or other skills that are required or helpful in your particular area? Got a lot of questions about that.
I wouldn't say that there's any that come to mind specifically.
Yeah, I don't think there are any certifications or particular internships, but hands-on experience is really important because a lot of the skills in herbarium work are pretty specialized and you kind of can only learn them from other herbarium people.
I think it's like if you're gonna do an internship or something, you probably have to have a source like what you gain from that, right? What you can learn in order to enhance your CV. But it's never hurt to put it on. But like for example, when we are hiring, because sometimes when we do hiring, I also involve in the hiring process. So we screen a lot of CV in our core. And of course, some of the CV we really unfortunately will get separated. But a lot of some of those who catch our eyes is like, for example, we are a core, so we look for people maybe who already work in a core before, know how to work in our special system. But you can't expect everyone gonna be like that. And indeed, some of the new people that I hire, none of them work in a core, but there's always some of the things that will click. And when I see it, oh, you have an NGS background, you know how to run a sequencer. Those are the points that suddenly, oh, this is what I need for my person right now that I hire. So those are the points that it's worth to highlight instead of having, write down 20 skill set that you know all my molecular work, all my like computational skills. You more tailor make for each CV that is what they are looking for and move those things into a priority when you write your CV. Don't try to get one CV for every single job like that.
Okay, so it sounds like consensus here is that getting experience relevant to the job is most important. And it doesn't matter how you do it, if it's through graduate school or perhaps internships or whatever. Great. There were several questions that we got where folks were interested in the intersection between plant science and other subjects or disciplines, for example, biochemistry or soil science or ecology. Are there any subjects outside of botany or plant science that have ended up being really valuable to you in your career, or in hindsight, maybe would have been valuable to your career, or any interdisciplinary areas that maybe are particularly hot areas right now?
Yeah, for me, having a general environmental science background is very helpful for working at Lycor. Just understanding broadly how nutrients and energy are cycled through a variety of different ecosystems is critical. Um, I wish I'd paid more attention in college chemistry and physics because every day I have to use ideal gas law, Fick's law, Ohm's law. I rely on the nitrogen cycle diagram all the time, and stable isotope interactions, things like that. So those kind of those more basic sciences, I guess, or harder sciences, become really, really important.
I would say for me, really like biochemistry and enzymology. So while the work that I do is mostly molecular biology and NGS product development, obviously, NEB, we, develop and produce a lot of enzymes. So just having that sort of background is helpful. That being said, it's something that, right, is certainly interesting and, kind of I continue to be educated, daily and to kind of grow that skill set. So that's a good thing as well.
Here's a chat question about whether or not statistics is useful in your day-to-day careers. Oh, thank you, Michael, for putting that in the chat. Any other thoughts about related fields or interdisciplinary training?
I
Okay.
think, sorry, I was going to
Go
say,
for it.
I think some of those skills are maybe more transferable, or at least my job involves working on eddy covariance measurements a lot, which is a micrometeorological based measurement system. I'm not a meteorologist at all. I've never studied it, but having the plant background and kind of understanding how those gases are exchanged at the leaf level, they kind of said, "Oh, it'll be easy for you to learn. You can do it on the job." And in comparison to these kind of more physics-based systems, the plant was a little bit more complex.
Sorry, I lost my sheet. Okay. We've kind of touched on this already, but maybe we can expand on it a little bit more. Are there non-research positions associated with your particular industry or career where having a degree in biology or whatever is actually helpful?
So for us, particularly in our sales team as well, they like to be able to, hire individuals that, obviously can, execute in the sales side, but also have that kind of biology background. And I would say for the sort of kind of non-research roles, at the company, there are people that, are in sort of our marketing department that, have a scientific background that have since sort of moved into that role. So I would say it can be helpful or an asset, particularly for a company that's kind of life science focused.
Yeah, I want to echo for Daniel said, like, for example, I work with a lot of vendors or like the FAS from different company, and a lot of them actually is not from the medical field. For example, my 10x Genomics FAS is actually work on fish for her PhD. So, but a lot of times when company hire you, it's more looking at with your degree, are you able to capable to trainable, like pick up the new technology really fast? For example, Illumina is not gonna expect that you know all the technology, but when you get interview from them, they will say, hey, this is the latest technology. Can you, within 3 days, look at all the protocol and able to make a presentation? So that's what they're looking for the skill set, that you are capable to learn the new thing and then keep bringing the new science and able to communicate with the people, which is your stakeholder, or either could be a researcher or could be within your team members. I think that's what, like, when we're a grad student or PhD, we forgot that we, beyond the knowledge we learned, but it's actually the skills that you're able to troubleshoot when there's a problem. And you are able to learn the new things with what your existing knowledge is.
Okay. I like this next question because I think sometimes we don't know about opportunities until we are in them. So we had a question is there a job opportunity or a career path that you know about now, but you wish you had known about earlier? maybe the answer is no.
So I can say it's, I guess, less about the role I'm in now, but just I think being in a company, when you see, right, like if you're applying for a role and you see a job title, it's sometimes hard to think of like, well, what does that person actually do? And the way that, description is written, sometimes it's maybe, hard to imagine. But I feel like being sort of on the other side, whether it's, for instance, scientists in our production team, that do a lot of the QC testing and formulation, and also do a lot of like bench work and qualifying a lot of these things. When you sort of understand or on the other side, it's like you understand what that role is a little bit more, I would say. So it's maybe not directly answering your question, but sometimes it's hard to know exactly what the role is just by seeing the job description.
I think one thing when I was doing my PhD and postdoc, because I didn't think about much beyond the academic besides being a faculty member, right? Because that's always what everyone told you to do. Your PI keeps brainwashing you with that. But then I didn't realize until I'm now in my position that apparently this career and even industry people expecting you go to Bayer being a staff scientist, data scientist. But no, like right now I was shocked. Actually, a lot of people, even within my own team, they will go to the industry like being a salesperson, being a technical support in front or behind. And those are the jobs that you will think, how can I get into that? We don't know how we can get into it. But we would always downplaying ourselves that apparently if you use a lot of the kit, you are expertise on the kit and the product. And that's actually your skills, because you probably might know more than the company with all the tricks and all the downsides and upsides. And a lot of times when I'm start working a lot on sequencing, that people apparently are big company realize that so many platforms, what's the pros and cons of each platform, which their internal team doesn't know. And they will be actually love those are insights from you, and they will think you're a good candidate, because now you can talk to people about how good their product is and trying to sell people, right? So those are the things that I never learned when I was in a PhD program or a postdoc. But that's from now when I look back, I was like, oh, I wish someone tell me this, and that will help me to explore different career.
Okay. It is a tough job market out there right now for people graduating. And we feel for you all on this panel who are thinking about the next step. Do our panelists have any advice for recent graduates who are maybe struggling to get their foot in the door? In particular, we've had questions about how to make a CV stand out, or how to really make your interview go well, really nail that interview process.
Yeah, I think it's tough because when you come out of a PhD, you've been so hyper specialized or focused on your research question for so long, that you kind of lose sight of the broader skills that you've gained during that degree. Or at least I did. I know that like experimental design, data collection, data analysis, and scientific writing, these are all like very difficult skills, but they do speak to some broader competency that you've gained as a scientist. So translating that and selling it on your resume so that anybody can see the value in those skills that you've gained is really, really important. And the best way I found to do that is just quantifying everything, trying to attach a number to everything you did during your degree, and even things that you might not think are that important, like number of programs that you wrote in R or something like that. And I think that can help people kind of see that your degree isn't just focused on the specialized thing, and frame it more as a general resume rather than a CV potentially.
And I
Think-
mean,
oh, go ahead.
in this very tough job market, it's very painful. Like no matter who's looking for job, and even for us, if you want to change your career. So don't feel bad when you feel like I've been submitting so many jobs, I never hear something. You will feel like, oh, I'm get degraded or something. You will be surprised, like for example, when I put out a job, I will constantly get like 100 of them easily. And I actually have to screen every one of them just to narrow down 100, maybe to 50. From 50, I grade down to another 20. And then finally, I will have to find 3 to 4 candidates for a 30 minutes Zoom meeting before we do another round of calling of that. So that's like, unfortunately, it is very unfair. The way that I will see it personally is just I can only see your CV and see if you have some of the points that meeting what I'm thinking about my job that I'm hiring. And I will tell you academically, a lot of the job description is not written by me. Even I don't mind that what type of people I want. The HR will try to word it in a very weird way, and they try to put in a bunch of things that not necessarily I want, but I cannot control them. And then also the HR of the Northwestern control which CV come to me. And I actually almost missed a very strong candidate, which luckily she actually called and emailed me and say, hey, I came from this lab that, across the street, like from another professor, I'm looking for a job. I saw that and I never hear from you, but I kind of know you. Do you know, is it because my resume is not good or something? And I was like, my HR never sent your CV to me, and you are the one of the best candidate. And luckily, she advocated for herself and emailed me and find it out. And that's how I was able to hire her. So there's a lot of things behind, especially in a big company or like a school. You'll be shocked. Like even I am a assistant director. I have no control what the HR does.
I think that was super valuable, what you just said. And what I would add to it is I think networking is super important. The more people that you know, the more opportunities you might have a chance at hearing about. Because I got my first job out of undergrad purely through networking. And there's a thing that I've learned about from the more like business community, which I have tried to do too, which is called an informational interview, which is when there's a company, they don't have any job ads out, but you're maybe interested in working there or somewhere like there. Find someone at that company whose job you think is interesting and ask if you can have a 20-minute meeting with them and ask them how they got their job. Do they know of any other companies that you could be exploring? What is, would they show you their CV so that you can look at it and just get information from people? And then if in the future they do have a job opening, they'll remember the initiative that you took in reaching out to them. And I know a couple of people who have ultimately, a couple months down the line, gotten called up and said, hey, we have this job opening and we remembered that you came in and met with us. Would you like to apply for it? So I feel like that's not, I don't know. I had no idea. Nobody said anything about that to me when I was in grad school. But I think it's been really helpful.
So this is something that I think some of the other panelists have also mentioned, but I would just, I guess, kind of reiterate that I think kind of tailoring your resume to each position is really important because I think being on the side of getting resumes and kind of looking at them and interviewing people, you can sort of tell if it's something that they've kind of really tried to tailor to what the role what we're specifically looking for, or if it's something that's more general. So I think that's always a helpful thing to do.
Okay. Sorry, I've lost track of where I am on my computer. Um, let's end on a maybe an upbeat or light note. What are some favorite and least favorite parts of your job? People know the real deal.
So I'd say maybe, one of the favorite parts of my job is, when you've developed something and get it in the hands of, whether it's a customer or a beta tester, and it's performing, like we think it's going to, they're excited about the data that they're generating. and they're able to answer, a question that they've, been posing. So that I think is really fulfilling. I think, one of the challenges, I guess, is, right, there's so many things that, we kind of wish we had the time to follow up on, on a more sort of academic, model. If there's a really interesting question, you might have the freedom to kind of go down that road. In a lot of cases, if something is, maybe not panning out the way we think it's going to, and we've sort of exhausted all of the kind of logical and kind of resource efficient avenues of looking at it, we sometimes just need to say, okay, we're moving on to something else. So that can be, sort of disappointing at times, but I think it's all kind of part of the job.
My favorite part is having a big pile of unidentified plants, and I get to sit down with my microscope and some big, thick dichotomous books of dichotomous keys and a cup of tea in the other room because there's no food and beverages near the plants. And just get to have a whole day to key out plants. That's my favorite thing. And then my least favorite thing is probably everybody's least favorite thing, which is emails and meetings. There's a lot of both.
I think I'll start with my least favorite. My least favorite is kind of being viewed as maybe more of a salesman than a scientist at times. I think that like if I'm doing a customer visit, there's like I have to kind of break the tension and say, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to help you. So that can be a little awkward in getting over that hump. My favorite, I'd say, is having working with researchers in the field. You spent all week building and configuring this massive flux tower, putting all the instruments on it, building your own solar system, and then you finally connect it up, and it works the first time, and it starts collecting data, and that's probably my the high that I get when I'm out doing field work.
I think for me, it's very similar, except like, anything that is related to science, that's what we're still all enjoying right now, no matter where your job position is. So when you see some useful data coming out and help people to move on the research, that's definitely the joy you enjoy every day. But at the same time, on the other side, because I'm working customer facing a lot of time, you will be surprised in even in academic, how many jerk you will see, except those jerk is actually a PhD or MD PhD that will accusing you for something that is ridiculous, even though they are well educated. And some of them will use their power to actually put it on you and say, this is your problem. This is your fault, even though you have everything documented. And sometimes you have to apologize for nothing because of your job. Or you try to say, let's talk as a scientist, like a scientist, but sometimes they actually refuse. And unfortunately, this is part of the job when your job involves customer serving. And that's what we never learn as a scientist, because most of the time you only argue with your PI or your colleagues that who spill up the EPM bromide in the lab to clean it up. But no, if someone tells you you are the one who make it, you just say, not my fault, unless you just say, well, we'll resolve it later. So that's a pros and cons for every job. But this is definitely a different, least favorite part that I never expect as a scientist.
Any other unexpected roles that you found yourself doing?
I don't know for other people that is in the industry, that's also very weird that because when we're in a PhD or postdoc, most of the people you talk to is, a master degree or PhD level. So we talk on the same language. Like basically you're talking on a similar level about the research. But once you're out of that bubble, you have people range from having an undergrad degree that is not on that area, like for various background. When you try to start talking about the science, it comes into a very weird format. And you're talking A, they might interpret that as B, and you try to explain it 3 times, and they still don't get it. but you cannot give up because of your job. So those are the weird feeling, but you will get used to it one day.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I've been you speaking with people from a variety of backgrounds, you kind of have to prepare to put on like the hat of an expert because you are the scientist in the situation, but also sometimes like you're a complete fish out of water. Like I've had jobs working on coal mines or ranching, and I know nothing about either of those things. So I had to rely on them for the expertise for that, and then I would just be the science person to give my opinion when asked.
Okay, one quick note, we're getting to the end of our time here. I put a link to a survey feedback questionnaire type thing. Please, please, please do that if you've been here with us for the whole hour. It helps us know how this event went and I think you have an opportunity to say what other events you'd like to see in the future. We do use these to help guide our programming, so please do that. Um, David, at the very beginning, had put a link to the BSA memberships, I think, and maybe he could do that again, just so you can see opportunities you can get through the Botanical Society of America. Um, we had one final question well, I don't know if it's final, but it might become the final question in the chat about collaborating with other researchers in your institution, but we could also run that to, collaborations more generally in your scientific roles. What's that like?
Yeah, so in terms of funding or kind of research related to collaborations, a lot of times scientists will come to us like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is the kind of field site I want to set up. And then it's up to us to put together a parts list, kind of order all of the different components and configure their own custom system from kind of a hodgepodge of whatever will get them to that goal. Those are really important. Those kind of budget lines are really important for a lot of grant applications. So typically, we'll work around those grant application deadlines for them.
So in terms of sort of internal collaborations, being in product development, we get to really interact, I think, with a lot of different sort of functions within the company, which is really exciting. So we can have conversations with our legal team, with marketing, with business development, QC. So it's really exciting to sort of, get to sort of touch all of those different functions and to kind of learn from, people whose expertise is different than mine.
All right, in the last 4 minutes, final piece of advice to job seekers who don't want to become faculty member.
I mean, I know someone asked about as an international, because I think I'm probably one of the only few of it. It is a really tough situation right now. Original, I was an international as well, so that's why like we go for a faculty or even a postdoc, because academically it's easier to continue your visa. That's the reality. I know some private industries still do sponsor, some might not. So a lot of times when you apply for the job and when you actually get the job, they will be asked you a bunch of things. For example, I have a coworker right now, like she applied for Illumina. The Illumina, actually the immigration lawyer would talk to her to see like, what's your status right now? How can we help you? And some of those big companies still willing to sponsor based on the level of your position. And for academic, like for example, our core, we in generally don't sponsor visa unless it's a special case. Not saying that I haven't heard other core, because I do know some other core actually sponsor. So for those cases, you might want to be blunt when you actually get the job interview. When you say they ask you about question, you say, "Hey, do you guys sponsor visa?" So you get an idea what is expanding for both parties. Don't feel like, oh, maybe I should talk about that the latest until you actually give me a job offer, right? So that will be a little bit better. And right now, it is really tough situation, especially the H-1B visa situation in the private industry because of the high pricing. So that's why I know a lot of people try to stay in the US with the academic visa sponsorship. But there's still a lot of job that is non-faculty on the academic setting.
One piece of advice that I've received myself and given to some other people is that it's hard to know when you apply for a position sort of what's happening on the other side. So it could be a role that's being posted, that they're planning to sort of hire someone internally, but it needs to be posted externally. There could be something very specific that they're looking for in a candidate. There could be someone that, it's sort of already applied and is pretty far along in the process. So it's sort of just to kind of don't get discouraged, because again, it's in a lot of cases you might be a great candidate, but there could be other, kind of factors at play that you aren't sort of aware of.
Any other final pieces of advice?
I think I would just
Otherwise,
say, just know that you're not alone. I mean, the job market right now is terrible, and your fellow job seekers know it's terrible. People with jobs know it's terrible. But there are jobs out there, and keep your chin up, and your network. The people who are in your network want to see you succeed. So lean on them for advice and for letters of recommendation. People want you to succeed.
that was such a positive ending. I feel like we have to end it there. Thank you again to all of our panelists for your time and your expertise and experience. We really appreciate having you here. Thank you, everybody who came to hear about non-faculty careers. Please do that survey if you haven't. I don't think I have the link. Oh, yes, I do. Here it is. Look at that. Open that up in your browser right now before you exit the Zoom and do us a solid and fill that out. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a great night and take care.